It's my guy there.
Kent, I could hug you too.
Yeah, how often do you get hugs from him?
Thank you. Oh, that's not true. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon for our alumni seminar panel. I'd like to welcome our panelists today, Kelly Hammer-Levy with Pinellas County, Katie Fiston and Sosa with Sammy Seafood, Kelly Donnelly with NOAA Marine Fisheries, National Marine Fisheries, and Brad Weigel with Project
Photoscience.
Photoscience.
Yeah.
Photoscience. We're excited to hear about photoscience here. So after I was looking at their brief bios that Dr. Alhine has, who is our moderator today, in large font, in large font for us to read, I realized that there's something similar amongst all of our panelists here, that they all had an experience next door at one time when it was called the Fish and Wildlife Research Institute or the Florida Marine Research Institute, so that was kind of interesting. I've been to 2 weddings of 2 of our panelists here, and one brand. It was a christening, yeah, might as well. I've had children of our panelists in some of our summer camps, so it's been a lifelong, relationship with many of them. Brad, we've been to many pig roasts together in the past, and so I'm just going to turn it over to Al. He has just a very casual, very comfortable conversation about what our panelists have been up to since they graduated here at CMS. But before that, I need to thank 2 other people, Mary Beth Neely and Bruce Barber. They've helped organize the panelists here. If you haven't met them, they're also both alum of the College of Marine Science, and Bruce was our first PhD from the College of Marine Science. So.
Back in the 60s. Right?
Back in the 60s.
Actually, I attended his event. Well, thank you for coming. I wish I could take some credit for organizing this, but I can't. But it's a wonderful idea, so thank you, Howard, for putting this together, and others, Bruce and whatnot. I think this is a really important thing to do, and I participated in this at other universities, so I'm glad we're doing it here. And I had it in the back of my mind, but you guys really beat me to it. It's important to engage our alumni, the people that we put out. When I came here, we didn't have any alums. You basically remember that. There were we had a bunch of graduates. Well, Kent remembers that. Okay, I defer to your experience. Okay, there was a group of 8, and then another group of 8 or 9 were hired in 1979, and maybe by 1979 a handful had been turned out, but that was about it. So since 1979 we've turned out, I'm guessing 500. Something like that. I don't know how many, 100, over 100 PhDs, I know that. So we built a group, and in my 35 years of being here, which is kind of frightening. I can't believe I've been here 35 years. So this is terrific. So now it's time for us to engage you guys, and for you guys to engage us. And like I say, I've done so at other the universities I went to, and it's been a really worthwhile experience. Let me just point out one thing. Based on that, I'll just tell you my experience, and it might be a way in which we can get started on a discussion here. And as Howard said, this is really informal, okay, guys? This is just really informal. It's just us chickens here. When in my own experience, I went to a very rigorous undergraduate school, but really wasn't a serious student, and I didn't really get into my field until I went to grad school. And so graduate school was a seminal experience for me. That's when I got serious about being a scientist and whatnot. Undergraduate work was just, did a lot of different things. I was 18 and 19, too young. But by the time I got to graduate school, I was very impressed with the faculty and the other graduate students and how seriously they took their studies. They studied hard, they worked hard, and they tried to do the very best that they could. And so I became a professional. And I went back and told these people that a couple of years ago. And I said, I really became a professional when I went to graduate school. I wasn't a budding professional as an undergraduate. I was just kind of a goof off. And got that out of my system and went to graduate school and became a professional. So that's my experience. I learned from particularly the senior students. The PhDs taught the beginning masters quite a bit. So that's just as important experience as the faculty teaching the students as well. So that was my experience. And so graduate school was wonderful experience because I grew up, I became a professional, I wanted to become a professional, I wanted to work in the field, that's where I decided to stay in the field, not just, oh, what's that next, now I got my PhD, what the heck do I do with that? But I had a plan and off it went, and looking back on my career now, and I have no regrets, I'm glad I did what I did, but it began in graduate school for me, not undergraduate school, or any other job that I had taken after graduate work. So I hope it's kind of the same experience for you guys, and for some of you students and some of you that are been out for a while. I can't remember, I can remember my courses are a blur, except for one course, which was really hard, and everybody groaned and moaned through it, and it was just a ton of work. I can remember looking down microscopes at 1 a.m. in the morning, and my eyes were blurry, and I couldn't figure out what I was looking at because I was so tired. And the professor was extremely demanding and a very hard grader, and I got a B+, which was the highest grade in the class, I'm proud to say. And I'm more proud of that B+ than any other grade I got, because the course was so hard and so demanding, and I learned so much. I don't remember a thing about it. All I just remember is the work ethic that was instilled on me on that course. So that's my experience, and I'll just shut up and have you guys explain your experience. Do you want to just kind of, I've got, Howard handed me this,
Okay.
and I'm not going to read it, okay?
I'm not the really long one.
So why don't we start, Kelly, why don't you start and tell us about a little bit what you've been doing since you've been out, okay? Maybe 5 minutes, 3 minutes, and we'll just go down the four of you.
Well, when I left here, I went next door, not too far. I walked next door, and I worked over there for a year in the seagrass group. After that, I went up to the city of Clearwater and was there for 1 year. And then I went to Pinellas County, and I've been there for 15 years. I knew, leaving here, that I was not cut out to be a researcher. So did I learn something? Yes. I am not designed to be in the lab. Okay? There is only so many nutrients I can run before my head starts going crazy, and yet I went over there and did nutrients, and went to the city of Clearwater and did nutrients, and so I learned a lot about how to run nutrients, but it was driving me crazy. I'm not a good lab rat. And so what I did know is that I wanted to take what I understood about the science of water quality and analytical thinking, and I wanted to do something in my community with that. I wanted to improve the natural environment where I live, and I've been very blessed for the last 15 years I started at the county as an environmental scientist 1. I spent hours down here actually borrowing Gabe Bargo's microscope, doing phytoplankton ID work, until they bought me one at the county. I did lots of water quality monitoring, lots of report writing, and over the course of time, I went from being an environmental scientist 1 and grew and learned, and was very blessed to work with some incredible leaders, just really good systems thinkers. Take a problem and really be able to break it down into its components and look at things holistically, and really take a sustainability approach to what we do, because even though I have this incredible love for the environment, I also have to remember that I work for a government that builds things and permits things, and so you can't be an obstructionist. You have to be willing to work with all different sides, and so you're balancing economics and the environment and community's quality of life. Like I said, I went from a entry level. I now work in a division where I manage 150 staff. Everything from beach renourishment to mosquito control, and all things watershed management, stormwater management, dredge and fill permitting, dog permitting, mangrove protection, manatee protection. It's just the whole suite of environmental functions in this group. I get to work with incredible people every day, very smart people. Andy Squires was supposed to be here in this seat, and he works in our group and runs the coastal program. And he had to leave town, so he would have had Andy here. But I think he and I have had a lot of the same really wonderful experiences at the county. I love being there because I get to do great things. Working on dredging Lake Seminole, which may not sound like a great thing, but I've been working on Lake Seminole for 15 years, so gosh darn it, it's going to get dredged. And I've done major stormwater retrofits. I have learned, so I developed and implemented the county's fertilizer ordinance, so whether you like me or hate me, I'm sorry. I've got people on both sides, trust me. Last year, I developed and implemented, with the help of many people, a stormwater utility. I never would have thought 10 years ago that I would have been asked to lead that effort for the county to develop a major funding mechanism to support infrastructure improvements and water quality improvements. So it has been a journey. Every day it's a journey. You've got to be a continuous student and be willing to learn. I've worked with planners, and I have learned so much at the job that I'm at, and I learn more every day. Every single new person that comes into my life, they teach me something else, and that's, I consider myself a continuous student, and then I help others be a continuous learner, because I think we just hired a whole bunch of brand new scientists, and I'm looking at them going, okay, one of them is going to replace me in about 10 years, so I got to get them ready. So I've got to do all of the things that others have done for me and help them get ready to be that next leader who's going to take on the challenge of keeping our environment healthy for the future of the county. And that's it.
Katie?
My name's Katie Sosa. I was a graduate student here and graduated in 1996. And unlike Professor Al, it's not the courses I took that I remember. It's the people. I graduated with Howard. And today when I was trying to find a place to park, I was on one end, he was on the other, and I finally rolled down the window and was like, hey! And I remember the very first year I started here, I didn't get accepted. I was just wandering around the grounds looking for people and places, and Howard was down the hall, and I remember yelling down this hall like, hey! Or you yelled at me, I can't remember. But I started as a off-the-books student. I was on spring break one year down at Siesta Key, and had gotten my BS in biology and geology in upstate New York at a school called the University of Rochester, and spent a couple years living on islands, Hawaii and the Keys and Catalina in California, and my older brother told me I had to do something more important, and so on spring break, I drove up here and I interviewed with Jean Shin at USGS, and I had another visit with a professor that's no longer here, and Jean Shin was great. He was really inspiring and got me really excited about the whole program. And the other professor was like, why do you want to go into marine biology? It doesn't pay. This is a terrible field. There's nowhere to go with it. And I thought at first, I was, oh my God, I can't believe he's saying this. And then when Howard told me I had to come and talk, I was like, well, what do you do in marine science? So older, I know where he was coming from. So I think this is part of probably why Howard is establishing this, to kind of knock down your walls to think outside the box. Coming from a family that just preached the aristocracy of education, the one thing coming here did for me was open a lot more doors. And I knew in this field, I enjoyed it. I grew up on the shores of Rehoboth Beach in Delaware, and I liked the ocean. I was a little scared of it, but I liked it. And I wanted to be a marine biologist or a veterinarian like every person under the age of 9. So vet school was crazy. So I came here, and I didn't get in. I applied. I didn't get in. I called Jean Shin and said, well, I didn't get in. And he said, so come take classes. So I took classes and was out partying one night and met Norm Blake. Norm Blake did sponsor me. I got a job after meeting Howard. He helped me get a job at the Pier Aquarium, and Norm Blake was heavily involved there, and he agreed to sponsor me. He didn't have any money, but he agreed to sponsor me. So I worked over at the Florida Marine Research Institute with Walt Japp and Jenny Wheaton in the Coral Reef Ecology Group. and I ran their dive locker, and I dove the Keys coral reefs, and we did transect sites of hard and soft coral. And I used data, which, by the way, there's a ton of it over there. They collect and collect and collect. They're not really good at producing paperwork out of it. So I used a lot of old data that was collected in Biscayne Bay on coral reefs, in particular Gorgonian or soft corals, that stretched over an 8-year period. And I just did a lot of scoping of it, but they had extensive data that I was actually able to come up with some neat results. And did that all without any money, just working at the Institute. And then Pam Muller took me on to kind of try to help me focus and finish on the writing, which as a creative writer, the scientific writing had a whole different stance to it that I had to learn. And Norm stayed on my committee. And after graduating, I considered a PhD, but I already didn't know what I wanted to do, so it was just going to be a few more initials to delay the inevitable, that I had to figure out something, that I wanted to do. But I did get my master's in marine science, and then quickly left the field, actually, and went and taught for a while at different places. And another position opened up here in camera over at FMRI, which is a GIS group that does a lot of the umbrella work of all the scientists below that, where they kind of make the maps of, the layers of the filters, where they can look and see it for patterns of the biology and the chemistry and the physical sciences. And after that, working there, I don't even remember what I did after that, but I did meet my husband that month.
That's probably why you don't remember.
Yeah, that's what I remember the most there, again, people. And so my husband was working for Karen Steininger in HAB, and we both worked here for quite a long period of time. I left to go work for Freedom Scientific, where they made hardware and software for blind people, and was actually doing graphic design. And then my husband, in working at HAB and with Ann Forstgen's group and Elizabeth Cody's mom, Teresa Cody, he started to his background is he went to Auburn for aquaculture, and then lived in Guatemala and ran shrimp farms and tilapia farms, but decided he didn't want to live in a third world country, so he got out of the whole aquaculture theme. And we were friends with somebody in the field of seafood. And so then my husband started thinking, I think I want to do seafood. I want to see what we can do. So while he was working here on his free time, he was also making phone calls. And I was at another job, and on lunch break would make phone calls. And we had some friends that Krabby Bill's used to own a wholesale seafood company right over by the Tropicana Dome, which is now a bakery. And we just got a little piece of their cold room, and I think they thought we were cute, and they let us have that little space to put frozens in there and do some cutting. And we started to do a wholesale seafood business. My cousin, Kevin Fitzsimmons, he's a professor at the University of Arizona. He's part of the team that actually discovered the reason for that early mortality in shrimp. He was going to China when Hong Kong opened up for trade, so he took Amelia with him, and we came up with a logo and some cards, and he went to China and started speaking about business with different people in the seafood field. So when he came back, it kind of kick-started us. And it just kind of grew from there out of our garage. And I was never really a good company girl. So I always knew that I probably want to do something on my own eventually. I was the one that was always thinking I could do it better than the other person. Like, well, I can do that. So I started this with my husband, and just kind of didn't have any other options than to succeed. Because during the process, I did get pregnant. I did have triplets. So I did have to feed them, so it created a new sense of urgency that, everybody always says if I knew then what I knew now, I wouldn't do half of it, because it was nuts. I mean, it continues to be nuts, but I had the energy for it, and we built it. Quite frankly, being pregnant with triplets, you don't want to go visit people because you look a little frightening. And after they were born, I got a pretty advanced stage of form of breast cancer, so I went from being really, really pregnant to really, really bald. So we grew that primarily I grew it out of my bedroom. I didn't leave there much. And now our company is about 30 staff deep, and we're at about 12 million in sales. And my shtick is still, my background is in marine science, and I've gone from saving to filleting. So what we do differently though is we trace our product, we support the local group. I don't know if you know that they've gone to individual fish quotas now on grouper. Grouper has made it from the yellow list in the Monterey Bay Sea Watch to the green due to this combination of the IFQs, where they have a bank account that they work off of, and once that bank account is done, they check in with us and we take it off their bank account all numerically, then they can no longer fish. We used to just do a closure for a month from February to March, which Mexico still does, saying, well, maybe in a month the grouper will reproduce, and it wasn't that successful. So instead, we've gone to a quota system, much like Boston's done with scallop for years. The scallop industry is so heavily regulated. So now grouper is actually doing better, and I am in an industry that's on the other side of research and education, but I don't think that we're that far off, because people are going to eat out tonight, and you guys might even eat seafood out tonight, and that's not going to go away. And farm seafood's fine, but it certainly doesn't taste as good. Now, my cousin does believe, because he's an aquaculture professor at the University of Arizona, that everything is going to go to farms. I hope not, and that's why we're working with the fishermen now, and whatever that they do to help support this local industry. We try to keep it on the forefront of people's minds that, if you buy local and support this, you can trace your fish. I'll show you guys how we do that table side with a smartphone. You can go